U.S. Steel Southworks site is a huge parcel of real estate on Chicago's far south side. It was once home to one of the largest steelmaking facilities in the country. But as the U.S. steel industry declined, it closed in 1992, and in subsequent years was completely demolished. Today, the only signs of the steelmaking operations are a few large cement footings left on the property. For years, city officials and real estate developers have had their eyes on this property. They have grand ideas about turning it into a residential development. To us, that seems like a misguided aim. The neighborhood surrounding the Southworks site is not bad, but it isn't affluent. So to put a huge development of affluent people in the middle of such an area doesn't seem to make sense from an urban planning standpoint. What's more, the people in those surrounding communities would like to have good-paying jobs. If they were to develop the Southworks site with an industrial base, they would have a ready workforce, most likely right next door. Right now we're approaching Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry, as well as the University of Chicago and the Hyde Park neighborhood. All are close to one another in the rough vicinity of 57th Street. The traffic here bottles up for a little bit, but as we pass the museum, it will open up again and be smooth all the way down to the Southworks site. The dome buildings that you see coming up on the right are the Museum of Science and Industry. The museum was chosen as a starting place for this video because most Chicagoans know where it is. This provides a good frame of reference and will allow people to understand exactly how far off the grid the Southworks site really is. Not too many years ago in Chicago, running a yellow light was a common thing to see. With the introduction of speed cameras here, it has now become quite dangerous. Running a yellow light means that you could receive a $100 ticket in the mail, and therefore we elected to sit this intersection out for the next green. On the left, we pass a popular beach. The appearance of Lakeshore Drive improved considerably during the administration of Mayor Richard Daley. In the 70s and 80s, the pavement was unkept and there was no landscaping on the median strips. We're now passing through Jackson Park on the right. The Obama Library will be constructed in the near future, not far from here. Lakeshore Drive is visible on the left. Nearby recreation facilities include a golf driving range and a boat harbor. Notice the yellow sign coming up on the right. It informs us that Lakeshore Drive will be ending. At that point, we'll be turning on to South Shore Drive, which picks up where Lakeshore Drive leaves off. South Shore Drive will take us the rest of the way to the Southworks site. At first, South Shore Drive doesn't look very different from Lakeshore Drive, but this will change as the video progresses. Notice the Route 41 signs. Before the time of interstate highways, Route 41 was a central traffic route through the city. We're now passing the South Shore Golf Course. It is on the right and continues to the left as we pass the upcoming high-rise. At one time, the golf course was a private country club, but it has been open to the public for many years, and its main buildings have been restored. The traffic light coming up in the distance is 71st Street. As we make a left-hand turn, you'll see the tracks of the Metro Electric South Shore branch come into view. On the left, we see the restored South Shore Country Club buildings. Take note that South Shore Drive is now down to 2 lanes, not different from many other residential streets in the city. It seems certain that if the Southworks development was to go forward, the road would have to be widened. This is difficult because it runs contrary to the prevailing attitudes in the city at this time with regards to developing streets. Space has been taken away from automobiles and given over to bikes, as we see from the bike lane installed on the right, as well as the left side for opposite traffic. The biker that you see now is the only one that we passed on this journey. So, is it worth widening the street to open up the Southworks site? It would take away green space and it would make more space for automobiles. Maybe it wouldn't be quite as pretty. Those trees would probably have to come down. But direct access is needed. Another issue is the surrounding neighborhood. It isn't terrible, but it isn't great either. A significant number of murders have taken place here, and that is in stark contrast to what they want to do with the Southworks site. How comfortable would people be buying houses in an affluent community that is an island on a sea of less affluent neighbors? It seems likely that there would be strife. Redevelopments of this nature have been successful in the past, such as Cabrini Green on Chicago's north side, which is still ongoing. But in those cases, there were other affluent areas close by. Cabrini Green has always been on the west end of the Gold Coast. The areas to the west have also gotten better in the recent years. Southworks is on its own. We're coming up on 79th Street. As we pass this streetlight, we will enter the Southworks site. The Southworks site is massive. It takes a good 5 minutes to drive across it. This is what they call South Lakeshore Drive. As you can see, it bears very little resemblance to the actual Lakeshore Drive, which ends at 63rd Street or so. It is likely they put the label Lakeshore Drive onto the road extension project to make people think the Southworks project was more connected than it really was. It seems that redeveloping this land for business use makes more sense. We have plenty of upscale housing in Chicago already. More is being constructed. And what people need in this neighborhood are good paying jobs. There's a workforce nearby that would be happy to work in distribution centers and manufacturing facilities. Everything does not need to be residential. And it seems in the case of the Southworks that the city of Chicago and its real estate partners are trying to put a square peg in a round hole. There was an effort to build a solo cup plant here some years ago, but the deal didn't come together, and nothing was ever pursued along those lines again. Yet another problem with Southworks is that the area directly to the south is still largely industrial. You'll see that as we get to the south end of the property. In northwest Indiana, there is still substantial heavy industry. Steel-making operations and petroleum refineries take up a lot of space, and it's not out of the question to think that the fumes from those operations could drift up to 95th Street given the right weather conditions. Given the fact that residents in downtown Chicago near the Blommer Chocolate Factory have complained about the smells from that facility, it seems like heavy industry producing petroleum and steel would create a similar response but on a larger scale. They say the Southworks has been cleaned up. They say environmental remediation has taken place. But steel was made there for 100 years. So it seems dubious that you can scrape off a little topsoil, spread some chemicals around, and declare it safe. If they do build residential real estate here, you have to wonder if residents in 20 years or so will be looking at a love canal situation, similar to that what happened in Niagara Falls back in the 1970s. We've now left the Southworks site and are about to end our journey by pulling the car into the Compass Minerals Chicago facility parking driveway. To sum it up, the Southworks site is an obvious attraction for real estate developers. But it's isolated, it's surrounded by a community that doesn't match the ideas that they have in mind demographically. And there are problems with both soil contamination and industrial neighbors to the south. Given all this, and given the fact that there might be a ready workforce nearby, does it make sense to try and turn this industrial land into a grand residential complex? We at Practical Chicago don't think so, and the point of this video was to help you think about it and make your own conclusions. We welcome any feedback in the comment section.